Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening all day to the prosecutor, to lawyers on TV, to lawyers on radio, to non-lawyers on radio, going on and on and on. And you know what's interesting about all this in Baltimore? We didn't learn a single new material fact from this prosecutor. Not one. And she charges on a complaint. She didn't take it to a grand jury. The defense, that is, the police officers, are still waiting for the coroner's report, the medical report. They haven't had access to that. So this is a PR battle up front. This is all politics up front. And this disgraceful prosecutor, that's right, she's a disgrace. This disgraceful prosecutor, her comments at the end particularly exposed her. She and that husband of hers, another radical kook who's on the city council of Baltimore, trash talking. Let me ask you a question. Do you think if any of these police officers had affirmatively beaten or physically abused Mr. Gray, do you think this prosecutor would have kept that quiet? Now, I'm not saying they didn't. Maybe they did. We'll find out at some point. Let me ask you another question. The seatbelt rule. Oh, the seatbelt. They didn't put the seatbelt on. Oh, they didn't put the seat. So it's the seatbelt. That's the issue. Well, this seatbelt rule didn't even go into effect until 3 weeks ago. So all those decades before the seatbelt rule on April 9th, let me ask you, how many people in custody in the back of one of these vans died as a result of not being put in their seatbelt? All these things matter when you're a prosecutor, when you're looking at a case, you're trying to make determinations. The seatbelt rule, did those cops have a reason to believe that if they didn't put Freddie Gray in a seatbelt, that he would die? I seriously doubt that, and trust me, their lawyers will make the case. But I'm trying to present to you some information. I don't know what happened. And the prosecutor's done a damn good job of keeping us all in the dark. And that's a fact. The seatbelt is so crucial that not until 3 weeks ago did the rule apply. And no, of course you wouldn't have thought that not putting that man or virtually anybody in a seatbelt would result in their death when you're transporting them somewhere. These charges, some of these charges are utterly absurd. I don't know what a jury will do. I don't know if this is going to be a packed jury. I don't know what this is going to be. Second-degree murder on the driver? What did he do? Did he go into the back of the van with a crowbar and beat the crap out of the guy? No, he didn't. Well, what did he do? Drive 10 miles over the speed limit? We don't know. All the material facts are still concealed, not just from us, but from the defense. This prosecutor, Mosby, 4 months ago was elected the state attorney prosecutor there. She provided us with nothing. Zero. Oh, the coroner, the medical report, found it was a homicide. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we went through this in the New York case. We talked about it at length. This is a term of art. Coroners, medical examiners, they have 5 classifications: suicide, accident, natural, undetermined, and homicide. Homicide does not mean necessarily first or second degree murder. Homicide means something was done intentionally that led to somebody's death. It doesn't mean the death was intentional or even criminal. Example, in your own life, 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. You decide to really hit it hard. You're going 80, 85 miles an hour. It causes an accident and somebody's death. It may or may not be criminal, but you didn't intentionally intend to kill that person. You intentionally intended to go 80, 85 miles an hour. That's a homicide. But it's not necessarily a murder or a killing. And the prosecutor had a responsibility, in my humble opinion, to explain that. But she didn't, because she wanted everybody to believe that a criminal homicide had been committed. That's why she didn't explain it. Again, I have no special brief in this case, but I don't like mob rule, and I don't like mobocracy, and I don't like government officials, particularly those who are prosecutors, playing to the streets, playing to the mob. This is about justice. It's about due process. And yes, police officers get it too. Second-degree murder. Now that requires an intent to kill of some form or another, and everybody's looking up quickly, well, what does that mean in Maryland? Well, it means a depraved heart. Well, what does that mean? It's a deliberate act that is so dangerous that it shows total indifference to someone else's life. You know, like not putting their seatbelt on. What? Exactly. What? That's second-degree murder? When they changed the policy as late as April 9th? Well, I bet police officers all over the country are shaking their heads on that one. I'll bet parents all over the country are shaking their heads on that one. Depraved heart for murder. Here are the elements. Second-degree murder is the killing of another person while acting with an extreme disregard for human life. So not putting a seatbelt on a guy is an extreme disregard for human. She threw everything in the kitchen sink at these cops. All the cops. And then the false imprisonment at the bottom. Now, that's how you really know what she was up to and what her office was up to. False imprisonment. So in other words, the cops arrested this guy intentionally knowing they didn't have probable cause. Now, how does she know that? Well, she conducted a separate investigation from the police. Well, she sure as hell must have, because the police didn't give her the investigation findings that they had until last evening. And this morning she acted, and everybody was stunned. Even the lib media was caught off guard. Well, you know, the prosecutor's office has been investigating this for 2 weeks. Investigating what? Who did they interview? The cops? The other guy who was held in the truck, who's now two versions of his story? Where did they get their evidence from? We don't know. They didn't tell us. We don't know. They didn't tell us. A separate second investigation for 2 weeks? And we don't know who they interviewed? Now, look, there's some issues here that really deserve attention. If he said he needed medical assistance and they didn't give him medical assistance, that's going to be an issue. It's not second-degree murder. But there are issues. But this, overcharging, politicization, withholding material facts, where's the medical examiner's report? The idea they're not putting a guy in a seatbelt is depraved or what have you. These are outrages. The idea that this is false imprisonment is a joke. It's pathetic. And this prosecutor is a hack. I'll say it flat out if nobody else will. Now, she won't prosecute the case. She'll turn it over to the senior prosecutors in her office. But I've got plenty more to say about this. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.